This program contains material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. Washington, D.C., April 23, 2001. Chandra Levy enjoys her last day interning for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The 24-year-old is just weeks away from graduating with a master's degree from the University of Southern California. Chandra Levy grew up in Modesto, California. Friends describe her as a vibrant, health-conscious, and happy young woman. Tuesday, May 1st, 10:45 a.m. Chandra emails her parents, informing them of her plans to return home to California for graduation. Less than 2 hours later, she disappears.
May 6th, Chandra's parents called the D.C. Police Department because they haven't heard anything from her in 5 days.
Officers perform a welfare check on Chandra's apartment, number 315 at the Newport Condominiums, which is located in the popular yet relatively safe DuPont Circle neighborhood.
The D.C. police entered her apartment to see if there's any signs of foul play. They didn't find any, so they left.
Cops aren't convinced there's a need to launch a missing persons investigation. So Robert and Susan Levy do some investigating of their own.
Chandra's parents notice on her cell phone records a number that appears over and over. It's the telephone number that belongs to Congressman Gary Condit.
Condit is a Democrat in his 6th term, representing Chandra's hometown.
He's described on the one hand as a very influential conservative, family man. But then there's another side of Gary, also known as kind of a flamboyant party-goer.
The Levys reach out to their congressman for assistance.
He told them that Chandra was the friend of one of his former interns. When Robert Levy got off the phone with Gary Condit, he felt like Condit was not being honest about the relationship he had with his daughter.
Susan Levy believes the congressman is romantically involved with Chandra.
The Levys contact the police and share with them their suspicions that Chandra is involved in an affair with Gary Condit.
Then Chandra's aunt calls the detectives and says that Chandra had admitted to her that she was having an affair with Gary Condit.
On May 9th, investigators pay Condit an informal visit at his condo.
He denies having an affair. He says that Chandra calls him from time to time for career advice, and he says that he hasn't heard from her in about a week.
The congressman dodges a bullet for the moment. Under pressure from the Levys, on May 10th, 10 days since anyone last saw or heard from Chandra, police finally obtain a warrant to conduct a thorough search of her apartment.
What they find inside are indications that she was preparing to leave.
Detectives find 2 partially packed suitcases, a cell phone, and a purse containing credit cards and a driver's license. Chandra's apartment keys are missing.
There were dirty dishes in the sink, her dirty laundry was there. All these indicated that she had planned to return to the apartment, but didn't. What that means basically is that she probably met with foul play outside of her apartment.
But who would want to hurt Chandra? Law enforcement seizes her laptop, hoping to find clues. But an untrained officer corrupts the data, and it will take weeks to fix. Meanwhile, investigators piece together a timeline of Levy's interactions leading up to her disappearance. Friday, April 27th, Chandra meets with her friend Robert Kirkjian at his apartment. She tells him she wants to marry Congressman Condit and expects he'll leave his wife for her. Saturday, April 28th, Chandra leaves 2 voicemails for her landlord. She wants to break her lease, explaining she has no reason to stay in Washington, D.C. Sunday, April 29th, Chandra leaves a voicemail for her aunt. She has big news to discuss, but doesn't say what it is. Monday, April 30th, Chandra goes to the gym and cancels her membership. She's seen leaving around 7 p.m. This is the last time anyone sees Chandra Levy.
At some point during those final days in D.C., Chandra Levy met with Gary Condit.
Chandra's parents desperately want to know what role, if any, did the congressman have in their daughter's disappearance. sunny afternoon in May 2001, Chandra Levy, a grad student interning in Washington, D.C., walked out of her apartment and never returned. Investigators take a hard look at the people who last came in contact with Chandra. Two of her friends, Robert Kirkjian and Sven Jones, are subjected to polygraphs. Both pass and are quickly eliminated as suspects. But one individual continues to be a person of high interest. Gary Condit, the 53-year-old married congressman Chandra met with prior to her disappearance.
The detectives really dug in, believing that Condit was the one who was responsible for the disappearance of Chandra Levy.
On June 23, 2001, 7 weeks into the missing persons investigation, police conduct their second official interview with the Playboy politician. This time, they press him about his whereabouts on May 1st, the day Chandra went missing. Between 12:50 and 3:30 p.m., the congressman was apparently unaccounted for. Could he have been with Chandra Levy?
The detectives really focused on Gary Condit as the main suspect.
On July 6th, police interview the congressman a third time. He finally admits that he had a sexual relationship with Chandra. They ask Condit for DNA, but his lawyers balk at the request. 3 days later, he voluntarily submits the sample to detectives.
But that kind of backfired on him because they were able to match it to semen found in Chandra Levy's panties in her apartment.
Police subpoena Gary Condit's cell phone and apartment telephone records. Then, after weeks of refusing to take a lie detector test, Condit pulls a fast one on detectives.
He hires a private investigator to administer a polygraph, which he ultimately passes.
The fact that he passed it was seen as completely self-serving. Police didn't really take it seriously because it was not administered by current law enforcement.
The highly publicized probe into Congressman Condit only serves to delay DC's finest from figuring out what really happened to Chandra Levy.
There were several missed opportunities. The police don't immediately obtain security footage from the apartment where Chandra lived, and it was erased.
In the meantime, not knowing exactly where she had gone because the police had not yet done a forensic search on her computer, there were a number of searches being done all over Washington, D.C.
Officers search alleyways, abandoned buildings, and even landfills, but find nothing. Then, on July 16th, 2.5 months after Chandra went missing, police finally reveal the data they've retrieved from her laptop. Analysis shows that on the morning of May 1st, right before she vanished, Chandra spent nearly 2 hours on the internet.
At about 10:27, Chandra goes online. She checks Gary Condit's homepage, Amtrak, Southwest Airlines, Baskin & Robbins, and the weather conditions. Her last search is at 12:24 p.m., where she checks Rock Creek Park and Pierce Klingel Mansion, which is located within Rock Creek Park, where joggers frequent.
Rock Creek Park is a more than 2,000-acre wilderness located in northwest D.C., approximately 3 miles from Chandra's apartment.
There's a lot of valleys and crevices and precipices and trees and thickly wooded areas, lots of different winding paths. It's a very strange contrast to the city.
Crime stats show that crimes are significantly higher in that area.
Chandra decided that was the place she was going to go for a run.
Police conduct multiple searches in Rock Creek Park, but uncover 0 new leads.
At the time that Chandra Levy had gone missing, there was a drifter, an illegal immigrant who had been stalking and mugging women in Rock Creek Park.
The drifter is a 19-year-old El Salvador native named Ingmar Guandique.
Ingmar Guandique is a serial attacker. It was his method of operation to spot lone female joggers, wait for them, ambush them, and then attack them.
On May 14th, 2 weeks after Chandra went missing, Guandique attacks 30-year-old rider Hallie Schilling in Rock Creek Park. She fights him off and runs away. A month and a half later, Guandique attacks 25-year-old lawyer Christy Wigand in the park. She too fights him off and gets away.
Holly Schilling felt that Guandike tracked her like a hunter stalks his prey. Christy Wigand said that she thought Guandike was a bold and practiced attacker who waited till he thought she was too tired to resist before he pounced on her.
When detectives working the Chandra Levy case go to locate Guandike for questioning, they're surprised to find him already in custody for the Schilling and Wigand attacks.
The police ultimately interview the illegal immigrant with regards to Chandra's disappearance.
He basically admitted that he saw her in the park, but he claimed he didn't touch her.
During the summer of 2001, the Chandra Levy disappearance was the biggest news story on the planet. Cops finally had a strong suspect. Ingmar Guandike had been arrested for attacking 2 women jogging in Rock Creek Park, the last place Levy was presumed to be.
He attacked them from behind, knocked them to the ground, and then threatened them with a knife.
On February 4th, 2002, 9 months into the Levy investigation, cops are finally able to ask Guandike some pointed questions about Chandra. They subject him to a polygraph, but since he only speaks Spanish and the polygrapher only speaks English, the results are controversial.
Apparently he passed it, and therefore they didn't pay any attention to him after that fact.
4 days later, on February 8th, Guandike pleads guilty to attacking Holly Schilling and Christy Wigand in Rock Creek Park and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. Over a year has passed since Chandra Levy went missing, and the trail has gone ice cold. But the investigation heats up again after a passerby in a familiar park makes a critical discovery. Rock Creek Park, Washington, D.C., Wednesday, May 22nd, 2002, 9:30 a.m. A man walking his dog in a heavily wooded section of the park finds a skull. Dental records confirm that it belongs to Chandra Levy.
Detectives responded to the scene, and they uncovered additional bones, panties, a radio, a sports bra, and a pair of sweatpants that were tied in knots.
Detectives now know, 386 days later, that Chandra Levy didn't just disappear, she had been murdered.
What they believe is that whoever killed Chandra Levy used the sweatpants to tie her up. Eventually, the medical examiner concluded that Chandra Levy was strangled to death because there was some damage to her hyoid bone.
The evidence found by the investigators indicates that the killer left Chandra Levy there to die.
Who choked Chandra and left her out in the forest to die?
On May 23, 2002, the day after the remains of Chandra Levy were discovered, Holly Schilling goes to the media and makes the connection between the attack against her by Guandike and the disappearance of Chandra Levy.
Publicly, cops downplay the significance. Privately, they scramble to uncover everything they can about Ingmar Guandike. During the time of Levy's disappearance, Guandike was drinking and had allegedly become very violent. His girlfriend later told authorities Ingmar hit her, bit her on the breast, and grabbed her by the throat. On May 1st, the day Chandra vanished, Guandike did not show up for his construction job. That same day, a woman complained to park police that a Hispanic male stalked her in Rock Creek Park.
The detectives find out from the manager of his apartment complex that he had a swollen lip and facial scratches.
Ingmar claims the marks came from his girlfriend, but she swears she never touched him. If Guandike attacked Chandra Levy in the park that day, were these injuries proof she fought back? Despite the overwhelming circumstantial evidence, the case essentially goes cold. Again. 6 years pass. Then, in September 2008, new detectives pay Ingmar a visit in prison.
They get a DNA sample from him. At the time, Guandike says to them, "So what if I touched her?" Subsequently, prison officials search his cell and they find a photograph of Chandra Levy that he had cut from a magazine.
On March 3, 2009, Ingmar Guandike is formally charged with the murder of Chandra Levy. He pleads not guilty. As law enforcement builds their case, they come across an inmate who claims to have intimate knowledge of Chandra's murder.
Armando Morales was a prisoner who shared a cell with Guandike.
Back in 2006, Ingmar allegedly admitted to Morales that he was responsible for Chandra Levy's death. According to Morales, Guandique was hanging out in Rock Creek Park when he saw Chandra jogging by with a fanny pack.
Guandique apparently admitted to Morales that he had tried to drag Chandra off the trail and into the bushes, and by the time he got her there, she had stopped struggling.
Armando Morales had one final revelation, that Ingmar told him he was paid $25,000 by Gary Condit to kill Chandra. But Morales' credibility is immediately called into question.
At the time, Morales was given a polygraph and he failed.
In 2009, 7 years after Chandra Levy's remains were discovered in Rock Creek Park, prosecutors billed their case against prime suspect Ingmar Guandique.
Guandique is charged with attempted kidnapping, attempted robbery, felony sexual assault, and first-degree murder. He pleads not guilty to all these charges.
Kim Rosmo, a renowned geographical profiler, is brought in to see if Guandique's attacks on two other joggers, Hallie Schilling and Christy Wiggin, match the circumstances surrounding Chandra's murder.
Rosmo's analysis includes the fact that Guandique is homeless, living at the outskirts of the park, that he attacks women on these isolated trails on steep inclines, and he uses a knife. Basically, he confirms that Guandique is most likely the person who committed this crime.
Yet law enforcement cannot find a single eyewitness.
Some people claim that the case against Guandique is weak because it's all based on circumstantial evidence. Well, circumstantial evidence can be the strongest type of evidence that you can put in against somebody. This is, in my opinion, an airtight case against Guandique.
Washington, D.C., Monday, October 18th, 2010. The long-awaited Ingmar Guandique murder trial begins.
Guandique's two prior victims, Hallie Schilling and Christy Wiggin, as well as a former prisoner, Armando Morales, all testified against him during the trial.
Gary Condit, more than 7 years removed from Congress, also takes the stand.
Gary Condit testified that he had nothing to do with Chandra's disappearance or murder, but he would not testify about his relationship with Chandra Levy. The prosecutors argue that Guandique used Rock Creek Park as a hunting ground, and Chandra Levy was just one in a series of victims that he had in Rock Creek Park.
On November 22, 2010, after 3 days of deliberations, the jury returns a guilty verdict on all counts.
Guandique gets a sentence of 60 years, and this is perfect timing.
Ingmar is just months shy of being released from prison, having served more than 9 years of his 10-year sentence for the Schilling and Wiggin attacks.
Following his conviction, Guandique maintains his innocence.
This program contains material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. Van Nuys, California. Friday, September 29th, 1995, 12:30 a.m. 33-year-old Sandra Gallagher is drinking at McRed's Lounge, a neighborhood bar around the corner from her apartment.
People call her Sam. She's about 5'3", 95 pounds, but has a big voice.
The mother of two has endured 2 failed marriages, but tonight she's celebrating, having just won $1,200 playing Keno.
Her plan was to take her winnings and use it to move closer to her sons, who are now living in Northern California.
Across the bar, a well-groomed, blonde-haired man is entertaining a small crowd.
He has a Southern charm, he's witty, and people enjoy being around him. Oftentimes he buys drinks for the whole house.
Apparently he's making a constant attempt to pick up the female bartender who's working that night.
Flirting, the man asks the bartender if she'll give him a ride home. She refuses.
Ultimately, he turns his attention towards Sandra Gallagher. She starts to flirt with him.
The smooth operator buys Sandra a drink, and the two begin to dance. Before long, he's asking her for a ride home.
His excuse is that he doesn't want to drink and drive, and that gives the very subtle appearance that, hey, I'm actually a responsible person.
Unlike the bartender, she takes the bait.
Around 1:30 a.m., she agrees to give this young man a ride home.
They leave the bar through the back door and hop into Gallagher's truck. The man only lives a half-mile from McGred's, but they never make it to his apartment.
Once he's in her truck, he eventually strangles her, stabs her, and lights the truck on fire.
Later that morning, authorities discover Sandra's truck in the parking lot of a North Hollywood convalescent hospital. Her body is so badly burned, it will take 4 days to make a positive ID. In the meantime, the killer skips town on a Greyhound bus.
Police have absolutely no idea who's responsible for this.
Jackson, Mississippi, Saturday, October 14th, 1995. Linda Price, a 34-year-old house cleaner and mother of 2, is with her sister at the state fair.
She was considered a sweet woman that had 2 personal tragedies in her life up to this point. She had a husband who committed suicide and a boyfriend who was very abusive.
Price isn't necessarily looking for a companion, but the man standing before her in the beer tent catches her eye.
She is struck by his brilliant blonde hair, affable manner, tall, good-looking.
The handsome stranger has only been in town for 2 weeks. He showers Linda with compliments when she asks him to dance. They hit it off and end up spending the night together in his motel room.
She tells her mother he's the most gorgeous man she's ever met and believes she's in love. During their brief courtship, he tells her that he's a construction worker. A week later, they're living together.
But soon, Price starts having second thoughts about her new boyfriend.
On October 31st, 1995, Linda calls her sister and tells her she's heard something about her new lover, something that scares her.
Linda's sister, as she's awaiting for Linda to tell her exactly what this information is that so traumatized her, suddenly she hears a male entering into the room in the background, and the phone is hung up.
Later that day, when Linda fails to call for their daily chat, her mother stops by the apartment.
Even though the curtains were drawn, her mother could still look through the window and see that the bathroom shower curtain had been pulled all the way closed. This is something they never did in their own house. Because of that, she believed her daughter was actually dead inside that apartment.
But 3 days pass before Price's family convinces law enforcement to perform a welfare check on the residence.
Police now make entry, and at that point, they make a grisly discovery.
They find Linda Price dead in the bathroom tub. She's been stabbed 4 times in the back and her throat has been cut.
Investigators also find blood-smeared paper towels and a mop. It appears the killer has cleaned the crime scene.
However, there is a clue left at the scene. Investigators note that on the bathroom mirror, there's a message that writes, "We have found you, Glenn."
Linda's boyfriend, whose name happens to be Glenn, is nowhere to be found.
So that's their first clue as to who they're dealing with. Well, first of all, who wrote it? Why did they write it? Who is Glenn? And is Glenn the actual perpetrator of this crime?
In late September 1995, a smooth operator picks up Sandra Gallagher from a bar in Van Nuys, California, then viciously murders her and burns her body. 2 weeks later, nearly 2,000 miles away in Jackson, Mississippi, Linda Price meets the same Casanova at the state fair. She's stabbed and left for dead in a bathtub.
This killer, his MO, he's well-dressed, well-groomed. He's uncharacteristically charming. He enjoys buying women drinks, giving them compliments. He tells them he prefers not to drink and drive and asks for a ride home.
If you combine all those features, how could anything possibly go wrong? And that's the persona that he has learned to really hone and craft, and it is absolutely deadly.
Once he has these women alone, his rage and his anger comes out, and he just doesn't kill. He overcompensates. Numerous stab wounds, slashing, and strangulation. It's one-on-one. It's very, very personal.
Gibsonton, Florida, Sunday, November 5th, 1995, 3 p.m. 34-year-old Tina Cribbs is having drinks with friends at Showtown, USA, a bar popular with traveling carnival and circus workers. Cribbs, a divorced mother of 2, has a hard, busy life.
Tina has 3 jobs. She works at a Ramada as a cleaner, works at another hotel as a cook, and at a restaurant as a cook.
Tina is waiting for her mother to meet her at the bar when a well-groomed man catches her attention.
A young man breaks into her circle of friends, begins buying everybody drinks and socializing.
She is absolutely charmed right off her feet.
The blonde-haired patron asks Tina for a lift to his hotel, the Tampa 8 Inn, which is 15 minutes away.
Tina Cribbs agrees to drive this individual who she's absolutely smitten with back to his hotel. And she informs the bartender, "I'm going to have a drink, have it ready for me, I'll be back."
Around 3:45 p.m., Tina and the man leave Showtown in her 1993 white Ford Festiva.
Eventually, her mother arrives at the bar. Well, Tina's not there, but her friends are. They tell her that Tina just left with a drop-dead gorgeous man.
Cribbs never returns to the bar. That evening, her mother reports her missing to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department.
Fast forward to the next day. A motel manager at the Tampa 8 Inn notices a white Ford Festiva. They notice a young man getting in that Festiva and driving away.
Before he left, the same man paid for an additional night and gave the front desk specific instructions that no one clean his room till checkout.
He had made his own personal do not disturb sign and placed it on his motel room door.
On Tuesday morning, less than 48 hours after Tina Cribbs went missing, motel staff enter the man's room, number 119, and make a horrific discovery.
Cleaning personnel find Tina Cribbs' body. She's been stabbed several times in the chest and the buttocks.
There isn't much forensic evidence for detectives to go on, but they immediately identify a suspect.
Investigators determine that the person who rented the hotel room was Glenn Rogers. They ran his name through the FBI's National Crime Information Center database and discovered that he was wanted for homicide.
Authorities in Florida now know that Glenn Rogers is a fugitive on the run, wanted for murder in Van Nuys, California, and Jackson, Mississippi.
Tampa homicide detectives are talking to Van Nuys homicide detectives. At the same time that they're talking to them about the suspect, Mr. Rogers, the detective is on the phone talking to the Jackson, Mississippi police about Mr. Rogers.
But no one has a clue where Rogers is. Bossier City, Louisiana, Wednesday, November 8th, 1995, 4 p.m. 37-year-old barmaid Andy Sutton is enjoying the night off, drinking beer at a honky-tonk bar called A Touch of Class.
Andy Sutton is hanging out at the bar with a man that she's known for approximately 1 month. They had originally met sometime during the month of October, and he has been living with her on and off since that period of time.
Witnesses at the bar notice that as the night progresses, the two eventually engage in an argument.
Andy and her companion leave the bar together.
A resident at Andy Sutton's apartment complex notices the next morning a young man with blonde hair loading up items into a white Ford Festiva.
It's the same man who left the bar with Andy, but she hasn't been seen or heard from since.
On November 9th, Andy Sutton's roommate finds her naked corpse on a waterbed. Andy's been stabbed multiple times in the chest and back.
Outside the location where the homicide occurred is a pickup truck.
The registration on this pickup truck belongs to Glenn Rogers. Authorities notify local media, the newspaper, and soon his face is known throughout the southwestern United States. He's now on the run in a white Ford Festiva.
In November 1995, Ohio native Glenn Rogers is on the run from law enforcement in a stolen white Ford Festiva. The 33-year-old drifter is wanted for 4 murders in 4 different states.
Glenn Rogers is placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
Over 400 leads are going to come in. None of them prove to be viable, not a single one. Rogers' own mother actually goes on TV and pleads for her son to turn himself in to authorities.
Rogers ends up in central Kentucky, where he visits his cousins.
As soon as he leaves, one of his family members calls the Kentucky State Police, tells them of his whereabouts, and she does this because she doesn't want to feel responsible for the next person he kills.
Waco, Kentucky, Monday, November 13th, 1995, 12 p.m. Authorities converge on Glenn Rogers' last known location.
One of the detectives responding sees a white Ford Festiva. He pulls alongside of it and sees Glenn Rogers. Glenn looks at the police officer, takes a swig of beer, throws the beer can at the police officer's car, and takes off.
Rogers leads the cops on a 15-minute chase.
The police try to shoot out the tires, which doesn't work. At the same time, try to set up a roadblock.
Rogers slips past the roadblock.
Another detective manages to catch up to him and then run him off the road, where subsequently Rogers crashes.
Rogers does not offer any resistance. The police then take him into custody.
Kentucky State Police finally have the suspected Casanova Killer in cuffs.
Following Glenn's arrest, he's interrogated for approximately 6 hours. During that time, he boasts of killing up to 70 people. And then sometimes he says he didn't kill anybody. Eventually, he does admit that he knew some of the women.
As they look into his background, it's clear to investigators that Rogers had been troubled since childhood.
He grew up in Hamilton, Ohio, which is very close to Kentucky.
As the sixth of 7 children living in a condemned house, Glenn is exposed to violence early and often.
Glenn's father, Claude, is an alcoholic, extremely abusive. His mother, Edna, has her nose broken several times by him.
Some even say that as a baby, he was slapped so hard by his mother that occasionally he would pass out.
Glenn was diagnosed at an early age with porphyria, a rare blood disorder that can affect the body and the mind.
Symptoms of porphyria include burning, blistering, and scarring of the body. Also, symptoms include anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, and confusion.
By age 12, Glenn starts drinking and taking drugs just to cope.
During Glenn's adolescent years, he and his brother Clay began committing burglaries. In fact, a string of 200 burglaries.
Then, at 13, Glenn experiences a series of traumatic events that will shape his rage toward women. The first takes place when Rogers finds naked photos of his mother.
He attempts suicide at that point in time. He takes 25 Motrin in concert with injecting alcohol into his veins with a hypodermic needle.
Glenn's mother, being a very attractive red-headed woman, that red hair ends up being a trigger, which later surfaces in Glenn's life.
All 4 of the women Glenn is suspected of murdering had some gradient of red hair. Also at the age of 13, he starts going to work with his dad, but it's far from a typical father-son bonding experience.
His father, who was a custodian at the local United Way, would often, in addition to Glenn, bring a mistress to work.
At some point, the mistress confronted Glenn one of these nights and, to his face, told him that his mother was a stupid bitch.
In a rage, Glenn pushes the woman down the stairs.
He runs and hides in a closet. He hears screaming and yelling. Then suddenly everything goes quiet. Glenn's father finds him in the closet and tells him, "Boy, you've done it now. We've got to clean up this mess." He and his father loaded the lady up in their car, drove across the border into Kentucky, where they disposed of the body on the side of the road.
Glenn isn't sure if he killed the woman or his father finished her off, but the idea of taking someone's life has a profound impact on him.
Killing this lady, he felt invigorated. It somehow stimulated him, and it was the first real conversation he had ever had with his father.
Unfortunately, his father cuts off all communication after this occurs. And of course, now this is going to build deep resentment in Glenn toward his father.
Law enforcement never looks into the matter.
By December 1995, 33-year-old Glenn Rogers is facing murder charges in 4 different states for the killings of Sandra Gallagher, Linda Price, Tina Cribbs, and Andy Sutton. Tampa, Florida, Monday, April 28, 1997. Glenn Rogers stands trial for the murder of Tina Cribbs. Prosecutors present strong evidence connecting Rogers to the murder.
Tina Cribbs' wallet containing her ID was found at a rest stop on I-10 in Florida. Fingerprints found on the wallet and in the motel room both came back with positive identifications for Glenn Rogers. And once he's arrested in Kentucky, obviously he's driving Tina Cribbs' car, and that's another way to connect the dots.
The defense argues that Glenn Rogers' upbringing and medical conditions made him incapable of knowing right from wrong. But the jury doesn't buy it.
On May 7, 1997, the jury returns a verdict of guilty. It's 12-0, and all of them in favor of the death penalty.
Following his trial in Florida, he's subsequently extradited to California so he can stand trial for the murder of Sandra Gallagher. Rogers is subsequently convicted of murder and arson in June 1999.
For the murder of Sandra Gallagher, Rogers receives a second death sentence.
Regarding the cases of Linda Price and Andy Sutton, authorities decide not to pursue prosecution in either of those 2 cases.
In 2012, after spending 13 years on death row, Glenn Rogers goes public with a story that no one can believe. In June 1994, more than a year before his killing spree begins, Rogers is living in Southern California. He works as a painter, and one of his jobs takes him into the home of O.J. Simpson's wife.
According to his brother Clay, several days before the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, his brother, Glenn Rogers, called him and told him that he had been partying with Nicole Brown Simpson.
Glenn claimed that O.J. Simpson had hired him to break into Nicole Simpson's house to steal back a pair of $20,000 earrings.
According to Glenn, when he went to the residence to take back the earrings, Ronald Goldman just happened to show up. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And at that point, he killed Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson.
The LAPD doesn't believe Glenn Rogers played any role in the murders. Neither does the Goldman family, but there may be evidence connecting him to the crime scene.
Glenn Rogers' work truck at the time was identified as one of the trucks seen outside Nicole Brown Simpson's condo at the time of her murder.
There is a second bloody footprint, which is located at the crime scene, which is subsequently never identified.
While there's no proof Rogers was involved in the Brown-Goldman double homicide, he remains a suspect in at least 4 other murders, all unsolved in the state of California.
Regarding Glenn Rogers, in some respects, as far as his looks, his charm, his ability to persuade others, he had a lot going for him. He could have really been anything, but yet he kind of took the easy way out. And then he eventually resorted to killing women.
This program contains material and graphic images that may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Liverpool, New York, Monday, August 22nd, 2005, 1:45 p.m. 38-year-old Stacy Castor is at work. She's the office manager for her husband David's company, Liverpool Heating and Air Conditioning. But it's not a typical workday. David's not there yet, and Stacy's worried, so she calls 911.
My husband has locked himself in our bedroom for the last day. He didn't show up to work this morning.
She tells them he was depressed, drinking, and he wasn't answering his phone. She says that she tried to contact him a number of times, but he just wasn't answering.
Police dispatch a unit to the Castor's house. Sergeant Robert Willoughby arrives to find Stacy already home, smoking a cigarette on the front lawn. They enter the house and head straight for the bedroom.
He checks the door to the room and it's locked, and he goes up on a ladder and checks the window, and that's also locked, so he goes back into the house and kicks in the door.
Upon entry into the bedroom, he notices that David Cassie is naked. He's on the bed. He has vomitus around him and so forth, and it appears that he had been holding something in his hand.
The sergeant radios for paramedics, but it's too late. David Castor is dead.
He finds 2 bottles and 2 glasses. One bottle was brandy, the other was antifreeze. The 2 glasses, one of them was empty, and the other one had a neon green liquid in it.
David Castor's death looks like a suicide, but several aspects of the scene just aren't sitting right with detectives.
Investigators find a loaded shotgun underneath the bed.
Officers wonder, if David meant to kill himself, why didn't he just use the gun? Also, David left no suicide note.
Sergeant Willoughby does a search of the home, and in the kitchen he finds a turkey baster, a perfectly good one, in the trash. And he noticed that there was a neon green liquid at the tip of the baster.
The residue in the baster is identical to the liquid found in the glass on David Castor's dresser. On the floor, right next to the bed, there's a container of antifreeze surrounded by a pool of vomit.
But there's no vomit on the actual bottle, which seemed inconsistent with the scene. So it seems obvious that someone placed the bottle there after David had vomited.
Who placed the antifreeze in the vomit? Police take Stacy and her 2 daughters, 18-year-old Ashley and 14-year-old Bree, down to the station house to give statements.
And Stacy actually gives a detailed written statement about the previous several days.
Castor tells officers about phone conversations she had, friends she visited, the kind of cigarettes she bought, and even drive-through restaurant orders.
If you go through a traumatic event, such as your husband passing away, you're most likely not going to recount certain events with such clarity. So when she starts doing this, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Stacy doesn't stop there.
During the interview, Stacy says that David was acting strangely for the past month.
She further explained that since David's father passed away, there's been roast talking about suicide.
According to Stacy's timeline, she was with David for 19 hours straight, from 4 p.m. Friday, August 19th to 11 a.m. Saturday, August 20th. She claims that Friday, which was just 3 days after their second wedding anniversary, she and David got into an epic fight over his wishes to take her on a 2-week-long second honeymoon.
Stacy refused to do this, saying that their younger daughter is too young to be left alone and therefore she's not going to go on this trip. She claims that David felt that she favored the daughters over him, and that's why this entire fight occurred.
Most of the argument takes place in the Castor's garage.
Apparently, he's so upset that he goes up to the bedroom, locks himself in there because he's so upset, and she goes off and takes a nap. She then claims that later on that night, they resume the fight, they go back in the garage, and now they're going back and forth for approximately 7 hours.
At this point, David allegedly goes on a bender, drinking over and over again and throwing up repeatedly. Stacy said she was being a good wife, cleaning him up, rubbing his feet, and covering him with a blanket.
According to Stacy, at 5 a.m. Sunday morning, David, convulsing on the bedroom floor, yells at her to get out of his house and take her kids with her. Fearing for her life, she leaves with the girls and spends the night at a friend's house. Out of the entire convoluted story, one statement stands out to detectives.
She also said she remembered him drinking a Pepsi, and when she asked him for a sip, he said, "No, get your own drink." At the time, she thought he was being a jerk, but now she thinks he was trying to protect her.
She surmises that he perhaps poisoned himself by putting something into the Pepsi and he's going to kill himself during the altercation. Detectives aren't going to really buy into this story.
On August 22, 2005, homicide detectives in Onondaga County, New York, respond to the home of 48-year-old business owner David Castor, who they find lying face down, dead on the bed.
The autopsy showed that David died of ethylene glycol poisoning, basically antifreeze, and they ruled the death a suicide.
Investigators question Castor's wife, Stacy, who denies having any involvement in his death. Yet she does offer law enforcement theories not only for why her husband took his own life, but also for where he got the idea.
Stacy theorized that David killed himself using antifreeze because they had watched a show earlier in which a woman kills 2 of her husbands by putting antifreeze in their Jell-O.
Investigators don't find any fingerprints on the antifreeze bottle in the bedroom or the turkey baster from the kitchen trash.
However, the turkey baster did have David's DNA on the tip of it. This would indicate that the baster had been placed, perhaps, inside of David's mouth to force feed him the poison. At this point, Stacy Castor becomes their prime suspect.
Detectives dig into Stacy's past, with a particular interest in her first marriage to Michael Wallace, the father of her 2 daughters, Ashley and Bree.
In 1999, Michael Wallace begins to get ill for no reason. His condition worsens over time.
That December, Michael visits the doctor, complaining that he constantly feels drunk. Before his physician can figure out what's wrong, Wallace drops dead one day while lying on the couch.
Doctors tell Stacy that Michael died of a heart attack, and they do not perform an autopsy.
In the aftermath of Michael Wallace's death, Stacy receives a $55,000 life insurance payout. Onondaga County Sheriff's detectives wonder if that could have given Castor motive to kill her first husband. Still, there's no proof he died of anything other than natural causes. Syracuse, New York, August 2007.
Because of the mysterious deaths of both of her husbands, detectives take the extreme step of exhuming Michael Wallace's body.
Skinny Atlas, New York, Tuesday, September 4th, 2007. Dr. Robert Stoppiger, the same forensic pathologist who examined David Castor, now performs the autopsy on Michael Wallace, which is 7 years overdue. Stoppager concludes that Wallace died of ethylene glycol poisoning from ingesting antifreeze, just like David Castor.
So now you have a connection between the two, both of them dying of antifreeze. They additionally find out that Mr. Wallace also has traces of rat poison in his system, but they're not going to release this information. They're going to keep it under wraps.
Onondaga County Sheriff's Headquarters, Syracuse, New York, Friday, September 7, 2007, 12 p.m. Detectives bring Stacy Castor in for questioning.
Stacy waives her Miranda rights, and she is now going to talk to detectives about the deaths of both of her husbands.
During this interrogation, she repeatedly refers to antifreeze as anti-free.
F-R-E-E.
Back in 2005, Stacy told investigators that on the day David Castor was found dead, she called him multiple times prior to dialing 911.
But phone records indicate that she had only called one time.
As soon as she's confronted with a discrepancy, she immediately clams up and demands a lawyer.
In September 2007, homicide detectives in Onondaga County, New York, finally have evidence confirming they're dealing with a Black Widow killer. Two men who died 5 years apart, Michael Wallace of an apparent heart attack and David Castor of an apparent suicide, were both actually murdered, poisoned with antifreeze. That's not the only thing they had in common. Both were married to the same woman, Stacy Castor. Liverpool, New York, Wednesday, September 12, 2007, 8:35 a.m. Ashley Wallace attends her first class of the school year at Bryant and Stratton College.
She's almost immediately visited by detectives who tell her that her father, Michael, did not die of a heart attack, but he was murdered by ethylene glycol poisoning.
Dismayed, Ashley tells the officers her mother instructed her not to talk to them because they have a lawyer.
Ashley was confused and upset by this, and she called her mother.
Mommy, they came to my freaking school.
They came to your school? Are you okay?
I'm gonna be okay, but I'm really freaking out right now.
Her mother said, listen, we both had a hard week. Why don't we drink to forget our woes?
Friday, September 14th, 2007, 6:30 a.m. Bree Wallace hears strange noises coming from her sister's bedroom. She opens the door to investigate.
When she enters the room, she finds Ashley with her head at the foot of the bed and her tongue sticking out. She doesn't seem to be breathing right, and she looks very ill.
Bree yells out in a panic, then runs to her mother's bedroom.
Bree gets her mother, and now her mother has a new boyfriend, brings him into the bedroom.
Once they move Ashley's head, they see that there's throw up on her face. There's a bottle of vodka nearby.
Stacy dials 911.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, this is not happening.
Bree freaks out and goes to the bathroom to recompose herself. When she returns, she sees her mother holding a prescription bottle in her hands. Stacy claims her boyfriend Mike just found the pill bottle. There's also a computer-generated note under a pillow by the back of Ashley's head.
She starts to read it, and then Stacy takes it away from her.
She ultimately hands that note over to the police that now have arrived on scene.
Turns out this is a purported suicide note from Ashley.
Paramedics rush Ashley to the hospital.
They find a dangerous cocktail of alcohol and drugs in her system, but they're able to revive her later that afternoon.
Detectives examine every detail in Ashley Wallace's typed suicide note, especially considering this is the third life-or-death incident where Stacy Castor has called paramedics.
Contained within the suicide note, Ashley apologized for killing her father because her father loved Bree more than she loved her.
The letter also states that she killed her stepfather, David Castor, because he didn't treat her mother well. So she gave him antifreeze in his soda.
She states that she tried to kill her father with a combination of rat poison and antifreeze.
The suicide note is also filled with grammatical errors. 4 times it states anti-free, the same exact grammatical error that Stacy Castor made when she was interrogated by the police.
Syracuse, New York, Friday, September 14th, 2007. While Ashley Wallace recovers at the hospital, investigators take sworn statements from Stacy Castor and her other daughter, Bree. Bree Wallace tells a detective that her sister would never kill herself because she believed it was stupid. Bree also says her sister had been in a good mood. Stacy gives a different detective a contrasting story. that Ashley had been angry about the renewed investigation into the deaths of her father and stepfather. Cops won't know who to believe until they talk to Ashley herself.
When Ashley was fully conscious and she's responsive, police now start interviewing her in the hospital.
She says she has no idea what happened to her, but she certainly did not try to kill herself. Stacy Castor was then arrested for the attempted murder of her daughter.
Syracuse, New York, Sunday, September 16th, 2007, 2 p.m. Investigators visit Ashley Wallace at the hospital to get an affidavit on what happened the night she almost OD'd.
And at this point, Ashley was starting to think that her mother must have tried to kill her.
Ashley realizes it's actually her mother who probably poisoned the previous two husbands and is trying to shift the blame onto her.
Ashley tells investigators precisely how she believes her mother poisoned her. It all started 4 days earlier, on September 12th, when Stacy gave her watermelon-flavored vodka in a glass.
Ashley notices there's something wrong with the drink. There's vodka in it, but also cloudy, it tastes very bitter, and she immediately becomes suspicious. So Stacy tells her daughter, hey, don't worry about it, just finish the drink. So she does. She drinks the entire drink that she's obviously doctored.
Shortly thereafter, she becomes violently ill. Stacy then purportedly helps her by giving her 1.5 Ambien and tells her to sleep it off. She couldn't sleep, so she gives her another sleeping pill.
According to Ashley, her mother tried to poison her again the following day, this time with a drugged-up concoction of vodka, Sprite, and orange juice.
This one is so bad, so cloudy, so unpalatable that she only can get a portion of it down. So her mother goes and gets her a straw so she can drink it, and therefore she doesn't have to taste it. So she's trying to get the whole drink down, which ultimately she does, and then Ashley goes to sleep.
The last thing Ashley remembers is her mother making her the drink. That December, a grand jury indicts Stacy Castor on 3 counts: the second-degree murder of David Castor, the second-degree attempted murder of Ashley Wallace, and the first-degree providing of a false instrument. Castor pleads not guilty, but she'll have to wait 2 years to get her day in court. Syracuse, New York, Tuesday, January 13th, 2009. Stacy stands trial for the murder of David Castor and the attempted murder of her daughter, Ashley Wallace. The DA provides evidence showing that Stacy had financial motive to kill her second husband.
Stacy's longtime friend admitted that she and her husband had falsely witnessed and backdated David Castor's will, which inured to the benefit of Stacy. Also, a handwriting expert testified that David's signature on the will was falsified.
The linchpin of the state's case is Ashley's suicide note.
Investigative analysis of the purported suicide note showed that it was written on the family's computer.
Because they had the house under electronic surveillance, they were able to hear Stacy actually typing away on the computer the suicide note while Ashley is away at college. And when you couple that with the misspellings of the antifreeze, it's not spelled F-R-E-E-Z-E, it's spelled F-R-E-E. What you come up with is the only person that could have possibly typed that note was Stacy, the mother.
According to prosecutors, Stacy didn't just spike Ashley's drinks.
The prosecution was also able to establish that when Ashley was passed out, her mother kept on feeding her a really deadly, toxic mix with a teaspoon over the next 17 hours in an attempt to kill her.
Bree and Ashley Wallace both take the stand to testify against their mother.
Did you ever try to hug your mom or say anything to her?
I did. She was sitting at the kitchen table and she had her knees pulled up to like her chest and she was holding onto her knees, and I went to give her a hug and she told me to get the F away from her.
What's the next thing you remember?
Waking up in the hospital was a detective asking me what I did. He goes, "What did you drink? What did you do? What did you take? What did you write in that note?" But I didn't know what he was talking about because I didn't write a note and I didn't take anything.
To the defense, they tried to pin the entire thing on Ashley.
All the evidence pointed towards Stacy.
Stacy Castor does testify in her own defense.
She steadfastly denies anything to do with the murders.
Did you kill David Castor by poisoning him with antifreeze?
No, I did not.
She also denies attempting to kill her daughter.
On February 5th, 2009, the jury found her guilty on all counts, and she's sentenced to 51 1/3 years to life in prison. Stacy Castor is a sadistic, narcissistic, psychopathic serial killer. What drives her to kill is intense selfishness. When things become difficult for her, her way out is to poison someone to death, which is a painful, torturous way to kill someone.
This program contains material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. Hewitt, Texas, Tuesday, April 4th, 2006, 4 p.m. 31-year-old teacher Carrie Baker visits her therapist, Joanne Bristol. The last time they met was in 2000, a year after Carrie and her husband, Matt, lost their infant daughter, Cassidy.
Cassidy, at about a year old, she's diagnosed with a brain tumor. She survives only a few months, and it has a devastating effect on Carrie Baker.
According to Matt, she begins to take sleeping pills, and she's never psychologically going to be the same.
The 7-year anniversary of Cassidy's death is causing problems between the Bakers. Carrie confides in her therapist that she's been fighting with Matt. The therapist encourages Carrie to spend time with her other daughters and to reconnect with her husband. Friday, April 7th, 2006, 7:15 p.m. Carrie, Matt, and the girls return home from Kenzie's swim team practice. Once the children are asleep, Carrie retires to the bedroom. She has a couple drinks to relax.
On the night of April 7th, 2006, Carrie asks Matt, her husband, if he would rent their favorite movie. It's called When a Man Loves a Woman, and it's the movie they watched on their first date.
Around 11:15 p.m., Matt goes out to run some quick errands.
He obliges, goes out, gets gas as well, gets a movie, comes back.
Matt gets home shortly after midnight. He goes to the bedroom and finds the door locked, so he grabs a screwdriver and jimmies it open. Carrie is on the bed. She's not breathing.
He finds a couple of wine coolers on the nightstand, a nearly empty bottle of sleeping pills with only 2 out of the 30 pills remaining, and a suicide note.
Matt calls 911.
And what's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
My wife is laying in the bed, and her lips are blue, hands are cold, and there's a note that says "I'm sorry," basically.
The dispatcher instructs Matt to move Carrie to the floor so he can perform CPR.
Okay, make sure, put your ear next to your mouth and double check, make sure you can feel it hearing your breathing.
There's nothing.
Paramedics and police arrive at the scene within 5 minutes. While EMTs try to resuscitate Carrie, Matt gives a statement to the Hewitt PD.
Matt's initial statement to law enforcement is that he comes home, gains entrance into their bedroom when the door was locked, which is unusual, finds her naked and unresponsive.
Matt literally describes clothing her because she would not have wanted to be seen naked by the first responders. Matt very calmly tells the police that Carrie had been very depressed since the death of their child, Cassidy, and that she had been taking a lot of sleeping pills lately, and he had been concerned about her.
Carrie's pronounced dead at 12:17 a.m. There's no medical examiner in Hewitt, Texas, so officers must call a judge to rule on the exact cause of death for the death certificate.
So they call a justice of the peace, notify him of what they found, and telephonically, he rules this as a suicide.
Less than a dozen photos are taken of the scene.
They take a photo of the note, the positioning of her body, the 2 alcoholic Bartles and James drinks, the sleeping pill container. No investigation is done. They accept that she has committed suicide.
Matt, a Baptist preacher, is used to everyone taking him at his word, but his statements don't seem to be adding up. First, on the phone with the 911 operator, he made no mention of clothing Carrie's nude body. Also, Baker's timeline doesn't seem to match the state of Carrie's corpse. Dark splotches on her arms and back indicate that she had already started experiencing lividity, the pooling of blood after death.
The lividity on the body would indicate a greater length of time that she was dead, meaning that she was dead well before he left to go rent the movie.
Carrie's parents, Linda and Jim Doolin, arrive at the Baker house around 12:45 in the morning.
Carrie's mother, Linda, had spoken to Carrie just hours before her death, saying that she was in fine spirits. There was nothing wrong.
She just can't fathom the possibility that she would commit suicide like this and that she would leave her 2 daughters. Those girls meant everything to Carrie.
Saturday, April 8th, 1:35 a.m. Carrie is removed from the residence. Her body is embalmed and scheduled for burial 2 days later. There will be no autopsy because the Justice of the Peace didn't order one, which concerns Carrie's family.
Linda, her sisters, and her niece are very suspicious of the circumstances surrounding Carrie's death. They decide that they're going to find the truth for Carrie. Carrie's aunts are the first ones to broach the subject that Matt is guilty. There's something about him they never liked, and they tell Linda this.
Carrie's mom blindly defends her son-in-law until an April 23rd family meeting where she's confronted with some alarming stories.
They start to inform Linda of accusations that she had not been aware of in the past. Sexual accusations against him.
Many of the friends of Carrie's that came over were sexually assaulted and propositioned by Matt.
Carrie's cousin tells one particularly troubling story, that Matt hit on a family friend at the hospital while Cassidy was in the ICU. Linda Doolin begins to question her son-in-law's innocence. In May 2006, nearly 1 month after Carrie's death, she's contacted by therapist Joanne Bristol. Bristol reveals what she and Carrie discussed in their last counseling session.
Carrie had said she found crushed sleeping pills in her husband's possession, and she was fearful that he might be attempting to kill her. She believed her marriage was falling apart because her husband no longer wanted to have sex with her, no longer seemed to care about her, and that she believed he was carrying on an affair.
Linda's doubts about her son-in-law are compounded when she receives her cell phone bill in mid-May. Both Carrie and Matt are on her wireless plan. The bill clearly shows that Matt continues to call his wife's phone number, even though she's dead.
Carrie's phone number had been given to another woman, and there was constant communication between this number and Matt.
On April 8, 2006, 31-year-old Carrie Baker dies from an apparent overdose of sleeping pills. Because her death is ruled a suicide, no autopsy is performed. Husband Matt, a pastor, tells everyone from police to parishioners that his wife had been depressed over the loss of their daughter Cassidy, but her family doesn't buy it. Carrie's mother, Linda, begins to suspect her son-in-law was involved in her daughter's death after she finds out he's given Carrie's cell phone to someone else, who he calls constantly.
The days following Carrie's death, there are over 1,700 minutes of phone conversation.
Linda soon discovers that the person Matt's been calling is Vanessa Bulls, a 23-year-old minister's daughter who attends Baker's church, Crossroads Baptist. She's vivacious and youthful, a sharp contrast to Matt's allegedly depressed and prudish wife. On April 21st, just 2 weeks after Carrie died, Vanessa had attended Kenzie's 10th birthday slumber party at the Baker house. She spent the night. She and Matt had also been spotted around town shopping for 2 expensive items, an engagement ring and a house.
Now everybody believes that he's been carrying on an affair with her.
Tuesday, May 30th, 2006, 10 a.m. Hewitt police officers question Matt. He denies the affair.
Since then, it has grown into a good friendship, and I know for a fact my in-laws don't like that.
The interview doesn't convince detectives to open a murder investigation against Matt Baker, so Carrie's family decides to take matters into their own hands.
This group of 5 women that are all related to Carrie Baker hire a former DA named Bill Johnson. He jumps in and starts looking at things that just didn't make sense.
One of the first things that jumps out as the new investigative team takes over is the fact you have a typewritten note as opposed to handwritten note. When there are a bunch of pens and paper around, why would you not handwrite a suicide note?
In early June, the Hewitt police are also on the hunt for Matt Baker's computers. Baker had just been fired from Crossroads Baptist. He missed several services, and there are also rumors of impropriety. A deacon threatens to file a police report in order to force Matt to return his church-issued laptop. Cops look into the matter, but don't find any useful information on the machine.
When they asked to investigate the home computer, he now claims that this hard drive crashed and was no longer serviceable or usable.
Officers then check Matt's office at the Waco Center for Youth, where he chaplains during the week. His work computer there is also missing.
Somehow, someone in the night has stolen Matt's computer, taken his secretary's computer, put it on Matt's desk, and then put the labels identifying Matt's computer onto the secretary's computer.
In early July, Hewitt PD assigns a new detective to the case, who petitions the judge for an exhumation. Oakwood Cemetery, Waco, Texas, Monday, July 10th, 2006. Law enforcement exhumes Carrie Baker's body.
An autopsy is finally done, and they find traces of Ambien in her muscle tissue. Ambien is not a drug that Carrie ordinarily would have purchased.
There is also discoloration about her nose and lips, which leads to a conclusion of possible suffocation.
In July 2006, 3 months after Carrie Baker dies of an apparent suicide, law enforcement decides to exhume her body and perform an autopsy. The results are inconclusive, but indicate that Carrie might have been suffocated to death. On Monday, July 31st, 2006, Carrie's parents Linda and Jim Doolin file a wrongful death suit against their son-in-law. The suit allows them to depose Matt and subpoena evidence against him. 4 days later, PIs working for the Doolins visit the Waco Center for Youth. Matt quit his job there as chaplain weeks earlier and moved 4 hours away. But his digital footprints remain all over the company's computer network.
In the weeks prior to Carrie's death, Matt Baker was online Googling death by overdose of sleeping pills. And he was also searching the drug Ambien and what its effects might be.
That same evening, August 3rd, the Hewitt Police Department is pushing forward with their own investigation into Matt. They bring Vanessa Bowles to the station and ask about her relationship with the pastor.
I just classified it as, two friends taking their daughters out.
Vanessa tells the officer she and Matt were just friends before Carrie's death. They'd only started dating after she died. Bowles also claims she dumped Baker in July after finding out rumors about his past.
Do you think that he had anything to do with her death?
After I found out some of the things, like about him lying, I think anything's possible now.
Over the course of the next year, investigators petition the McLennan County DA's office to file charges against Matt Baker. But a criminal case can't go forward unless the judge who initially determined Carrie's death was a suicide changes his ruling. Tuesday, September 18th, 2007. Judge Billy Martin, after hearing testimony from family members, EMTs, and medical experts, changes Carrie Baker's cause of death.
The cause of death moves from suicide to undetermined. The investigation at least can be opened now.
Police issue a warrant for Matt Baker's arrest on suspicion of murder. The preacher turns himself in and posts $200,000 bond, then declares his innocence to the media. Meanwhile, investigators dig into Matt's past, looking for evidence that he could have killed his wife.
Matt is a devout Baptist, basically since his birth.
When he's in high school, he formally announces that he wants to make the ministry his life calling and that he's going to attend Baylor University.
Baker studies church recreation and athletic training at Baylor. Shortly after graduation, he walks down the aisle with Carrie Lynn Doolin. The two had only dated for 3 months. Soon, Matt begins working at congregations around Waco, Texas.
Shortly after they're married, at the church there's a female custodian and she makes accusations that Matt tried to sexually assault her.
There's also a young girl that accuses him of making statements to her, indicating that he would like to have sex with her.
He becomes involved in an after-school YMCA youth program as well. In 1996, he's fired from this position due to the fact you have 4 separate independent females all make the same allegations.
Matt denies all charges against him. Then, in November 1997, a woman goes to the police alleging Baker sexually assaulted her in a locker room at Baylor. But in 2007, All of the allegations still don't give law enforcement enough evidence to move forward with a criminal case against Baker. After 180 days without an indictment, the charges against him are dropped. Kerrville, Texas, Monday, October 20th, 2008. Bill Johnston, the Doolin family's private investigator, deposes Matt Baker as part of their wrongful death suit. Matt recounts the night Carrie died. He doesn't admit to any wrongdoing and continues to deny an affair took place with Vanessa Bowles.
By this time, were you attracted to Vanessa?
At that time, it was just a friend.
Mm-hmm. You've never had a sexual relationship with Vanessa?
No.
By January 2009, after months of investigating Matt Baker, law enforcement still doesn't have enough to prosecute. They bring in a specialist to extract more information from Baker's ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Bowles.
Abdon Rodriguez is an investigator working with the prosecutor's office to bring charges against Matt. Abdon is very skilled at getting suspects to confess.
He knows she was more involved with Matt Baker than she's admitting.
Bowles refuses to meet with Rodriguez. In late March 2009, Vanessa Bowles testifies before a grand jury in exchange for immunity. Her testimony is far from eye-opening until the very last question.
At the very end, Abdon said, by the way, did Matt ever tell you what he intended to do to his wife? And much to his amazement, she said, yeah, he intended to kill his wife.
On March 25th, the grand jury indicts Matt Baker on one count of first-degree murder for drugging and suffocating his wife. The following day, Baker turns himself in and pleads not guilty. McLennan County Courthouse, Wednesday, January 13th, 2010. The Matt Baker murder trial begins. From the outset, the prosecution attacks every facet of Baker's timeline of events surrounding his wife's death.
They don't believe that in the approximately 45 minutes from the time he leaves to go rent the movie to his return and discovery of her body, that she could have ingested these pills and died.
January 19, 2010, Vanessa Bowles testifies in front of the jury.
She details Baker's premeditated plan to murder his wife and live happily ever after with her.
Vanessa explains that for some time they had been carrying on this affair before Carrie's death. And she also says that Matt Baker was just very denigrating in his speech about his wife.
Matt also confided in her that he had looked into drive-by shooting, but that was a little too complicated. He looked at maybe tampering with her brakes, but poisoning, that sounds like a good idea. He figured that the best way to remove her out of the picture so he and Vanessa could go traipsing off into the sunset was to make Carrie's death appear to be a suicide.
Vanessa testifies that not long after Carrie's death, Matt confessed to her exactly how he did it.
He asked her to take a pill to enhance her sexual experience, but the capsule was in fact filled with sleeping medication. Matt then handcuffed her to the bed to initiate a sexual encounter. Once she fell asleep, he placed a pillow over her face and in fact suffocated her.
On January 20th, 2010, the jury finds Matt Baker guilty of first-degree murder.
Matt is sentenced to 65 years in prison. To this very day, Matt maintains his innocent.
Matt Baker is a cold-blooded killer. This is a man that could not be any more devoid of human emotion.
This program contains material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. Van Nuys, California, Monday, February 24th, 1986, 7 a.m. 29-year-old nursing administrator Sherry Rasmussen and her husband, 27-year-old engineer John Rutten, are preparing for a typical workday. The two have been married for 4 months, and as far as anyone can tell, they're still in the honeymoon phase.
John and Sherry begin their day as normal.
They're going to go to work. Generally, she leaves before he does. Yet, on that particular day, she's not feeling well. So she decides she's going to stay home for a while.
Sherry returns to bed. John heads off to his engineering job 7 miles away.
Sometime mid-morning, John calls home to check on Sherry. There's no answer. Thinking she may have felt better, he decides to call her job, but they haven't seen her.
He continues to call throughout the day, about 4 to 5 phone calls. None of these go answered. At this point, he becomes somewhat alarmed.
John returns home around 6 p.m. to find shards of glass from a broken patio door scattered across the driveway. The garage is open, but Sherry's BMW isn't there, and the door from the garage leading into the condo is ajar.
John steps into the residence and he's not ready for what he discovers. He sees his wife, Sherry, lying on the floor, beaten and battered, still dressed in her bathrobe.
She has no shoes on her feet and there's blood all about. He additionally observes that there's an initial bullet hole, which is directly in her chest, just beneath the camisole.
John dials 911. Within minutes, police are on the scene. It's obvious to investigators that Sherry Rasmussen has been involved in a violent struggle.
Detectives notice bruises on her face, neck, and body.
Pieces of shattered porcelain found near Rasmussen's body appear to come from a broken vase, which the killer most likely smashed over Sherry's head.
Upstairs, one of 2 glass sliding doors to the balcony had been shattered.
They also look on the stairwell, and what they see there are items such as VCRs and electronic pieces of equipment that are stacked on top of one another that would lead somebody to presume that quite possibly there was a burglary in progress and she simply surprised the people. As detectives further conduct the investigation, they find a bloody smudge, which is on top of one of the VCR players.
There's also a bloody handprint near the panic button on the home's alarm system.
They do not see any observable signs of forced entry. So this is kind of taking you off. Did this person allow them in? Did they have a key?
As it turns out, there was not 1 bullet to the chest of Sherry Rasmussen. There were 3, any one of which would have killed her instantly.
But who could kill Sherry Rasmussen, a woman with no known enemies? The biggest clue comes from Sherry herself.
They also notice that on the inside of the left arm, there is a human bite mark.
The bite mark was swabbed for saliva, and an impression of the tooth mark was taken for later comparison.
Aside from the bite mark, Sherry's killer leaves behind very little evidence for detectives to go on.
They have .38 caliber bullets found at the scene, but no gun.
They have a blood smudge, but it's not a transferable print. They have no witness statements. They have no video surveillance.
Sherry's BMW, which was a gift from her husband, is missing. The only other missing item is the couple's marriage certificate, which detectives find strange. Still, investigators stick to the theory that the killer was a random intruder. But Sherry's father, Nels Rasmussen, wonders if his daughter's murder might have something to do with her husband, John Rutten.
Shortly before 1 a.m. on February 25th, the day after his daughter was killed, Nels Rasmussen gets a phone call, not from Sherry's husband, John, but from John Rutten's father, notifying him that his daughter had been killed.
Mr. Rasmussen immediately questions, why isn't it John that's calling me about the murder?
Nils calls John to find out what's going on and demands an answer, and John hangs up.
Why is Sherry's husband so standoffish? Does he have something to hide? Or worse, did he have a role in her death?
Mr. Rasmussen begins to question, was it possibly John that was the one that murdered my daughter?
On February 24th, 1986, 29-year-old Sherry Rasmussen is beaten and shot to death. In a typical murder case, the victim's spouse automatically becomes a suspect. But in this case, Sherry's husband, John Rutten, is barely questioned.
Who is John Rutten? Well, he's a 27-year-old engineer, and he apparently is very outgoing. You know, he's got a lot of personality, charm. He meets Sherry at a party, and the two of them obviously are textbook made for each other.
There are no apparent problems in the Ruttens' marriage, and John has an airtight alibi. On the day of Sherry's murder, he was seen at work all day. So, police dismiss Rutten as a suspect. But Sherry's father still thinks John is a key piece to the puzzle. He tells detectives about a strange conversation he had with his daughter right before she got married.
Sherry had often called and confided in her father that there was a strange woman who had appeared at their home on more than one occasion demanding to speak with John. This woman would often manufacture reasons to engage John. Sherry didn't particularly like this because John had admitted to her that this was a former lover.
Sherry never told her father the woman's name. Regardless, detectives remain more interested in suspects who fit their robbery gone wrong theory. Nels Rasmussen will spend the next 5 years, from 1986 to 1991, begging the LAPD to dig deeper. With no new leads or suspects, the Sherry Rasmussen murder case is pushed aside and forgotten.
The evidence is eventually packed away and stored in a large area with hundreds of other cold cases.
December 2004, the LAPD's expanded cold case unit reopens the unsolved Sherry Rasmussen murder case. Criminalist Jennifer Butterworth is assigned to the investigation. She reviews the case files, and one thing sticks out: DNA samples that had been taken at the crime scene, but somehow they've been removed from the list of evidence.
Initially, they're lost. She can't locate them. The most likely place where these DNA swabs are located is in the freezer of the coroner's office.
After hours and hours of searching, she finally spots an envelope, and written on the envelope is the name Rasmussen.
She opens up the manila envelope. Much to her relief, there is a screw cap vial containing 2 DNA swabs, which have been sitting there, isolated, unmoving, for over 18 years.
The samples are sent out for analysis. When the results come in 1 month later, they turn the investigation on its head.
At this point, we have a profile. We have the definitive analysis that is, in fact, a female bite mark.
The swabs confirm that Sherry was not killed by 2 unnamed Latino burglars who police suspected back in 1986. Unfortunately, the DNA doesn't match anyone in the national database.
Without a suspect, you have nowhere to go. Despite the fact that we've got this evidence, it's resealed, placed back on the shelf, and now we're going to have to wait to find out what happens.
Los Angeles, California, February 2009. Crime rates fall across the city, giving the LAPD time to take yet another look at the Sherry Rasmussen cold case.
The theory now being that Sherry Rasmussen did not surprise burglars, but rather she had been surprised by an intruder who had entered the home looking for her specifically, and therefore that stacked stereo and VCR having been placed at the bottom of the stairs was in fact staged to give the appearance of a burglary.
Which is showing a tremendous amount of knowledge of police work.
Detectives wonder, is it possible that Sherry Rasmussen's murderer is one of their own? In February 2009, 23 years after the murder of Sherry Rasmussen, Detective Jim Nuttall and his team of investigators in the Los Angeles Police Department zero in on the killer. Through advances in DNA technology, they now know that a woman is the culprit, and this particular woman knew exactly how to fool cops into thinking Sherry died during a botched burglary. Police identify 5 potential suspects, but quickly eliminate 4 of them.
The name of a woman innocently appears on a log entry. It's a message dated November 19th, 1987, and it states, John Rutan called, verified Stephanie Lazarus, police officer, is former girlfriend.
Stephanie Lazarus isn't just any run-of-the-mill officer. She's one of the LAPD's best and brightest.
LAPD now has to surveil one of its own.
Investigators dig into Lazarus's background before she joined the force.
In 1978, Stephanie's accepted into UCLA. She's a member of the JV basketball team. She's an associate of many other athletes on campus, really well-liked. In 1982, she graduates from UCLA and surprises everybody. She decides that she wants to be a police officer and joins the Los Angeles Police Department.
Lazarus gets her start in robbery homicide and quickly moves up the ranks before being handpicked in 2007 for the LAPD's high-stakes art theft unit.
She's squeaky clean. She's a cop's cop. She receives a number of commendations and accolades for her work in the field.
She's someone who's easy to smile, but also has a quick temper.
Stephanie displays a Jekyll and Hyde personality while rising through the LAPD ranks. Her volatile temper earns her the nickname Spazarus from fellow officers. Still, detectives are shocked that Stephanie Lazarus could have any part in the commission of a murder.
At no point in time, if you're following a dirty officer, can you let any other officers know of the case that you're working on.
An elite team of officers is selected and vetted. They start surveilling Lazarus in early May 2009. One group is positioned by Lazarus's vehicle which she parks at the Simi Valley Metro Station on workdays.
And another group is going to be positioned down at Parker Center where she works.
A set of officers are staged at her home with search warrants waiting to search when given the word.
The officers must obtain a DNA sample from Stephanie Lazarus without alerting the top cop that they're tailing her.
They surveil her for quite some time. Finally, on one of those days, she ends up going to a Costco. At Costco, she decides she's going to have a slice of pizza and a Coke. She has the pizza, she has the Coke, she takes the 2 items, and she discards them in the trash. When she leaves, detectives come up, they bag it right away and take it down for evidence.
Saliva recovered from Stephanie Lazarus's straw is compared to the DNA taken from the bite mark left on Sherry Rasmussen.
It's a 100% match. The DNA sequencing of the bite mark, which was taken at the homicide scene some 23 years prior, is an exact match to Stephanie Lazarus, LAPD detective.
Parker Center, Van Nuys, California, Friday, June 5th, 2009. Stephanie Lazarus heads to work as normal. Detective Jim Nuttall's elite team puts the wheels in motion to disarm Lazarus and bring her into custody.
They tell her that there's a suspect in custody who needs to be interviewed and ask her to accompany another detective downstairs.
Lazarus is led into the interrogation room. She immediately senses something is amiss.
You're going to bring somebody in, right?
Yeah, well, I can explain the whole thing to you.
There's no suspect there, other than Stephanie Lazarus herself. Detectives put Lazarus on the spot, asking her directly about John Rutten and Sherry Rasmussen.
Do you know John Rutten?
John Rutten?
Rutten.
Oh, yeah, I went to school with him.
She remains cagey and elusive. She refuses to admit whether or not she's ever met Sherry Rasmussen and denies any involvement with John Rutten.
I mean, you said I was going to interview somebody about art and how you guys are...
She's vacillating back and forth between I knew him, I didn't know him, to what depth. Eventually, I believe that she actually cops out to the fact that, well, I met him at a party, which is hardly the fact of the case.
You know, God, that's been a million years ago. I mean, you know, what year is it now? 2009? I mean, I graduated in 82.
Detectives asked her if she'd ever been in an altercation with Sherry Rasmussen. She denied ever having fought with her.
Police tell Lazarus about the DNA evidence they have from the Rasmussen murder scene and ask if she'll submit to testing to eliminate herself as a suspect.
If we ask you to point, give us a DNA sample, a buccal swab, so we can identify or eliminate you, would you be willing to do that?
Maybe.
She suddenly realizes, hey, I'm becoming a primary suspect.
Now you're accusing me of this? Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to figure out what happened, Stephanie.
Once outside the room, she's met by another group of police officers who take her into custody. And in doing so, one of the officers looks to her and says simply, "Saliva works wonders."
49-year-old LAPD detective Stephanie Lazarus is arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Sherry Rasmussen. Los Angeles, California, Monday, February 6th, 2012. Suspected killer cop Stephanie Lazarus finally has her day in court. In her 27 years with the LAPD, she's never had a blemish on her record until now. During the trial, the prosecution gets to the teeth of the matter, arguing that Stephanie Lazarus was responsible for Sherry Rasmussen's infamous bite mark.
Prosecutors surmise that a struggle ensued between the two women. At some point, Sherry possibly had Stephanie in a headlock, and Stephanie bit her on the inner left arm to break free.
The bullets recovered from the body matched those of a .38 Special, fired from a Smith & Wesson. That particular gun in a 2-inch configuration had been purchased by Stephanie Lazarus at the Academy. And remarkably, 2 days after the homicide occurs, Stephanie Lazarus claims her gun was stolen from a workout bag in her car in Santa Monica.
To establish motive, prosecutors highlight Stephanie's documented history of obsession with John Rutten, the man she dated at UCLA, who happened to become Sherry Rasmussen's husband.
On August 6, 1985, Stephanie had written a letter to John's mother where she professed her love for John and her disappointment that he had chosen Sherry over her.
John Rutten, who has been mysteriously silent in the 26 years since his wife's death, finally speaks out. He's called to the witness stand and drops a bombshell.
He admits that he and Stephanie had sex dozens of times prior to the marriage of Sherry Rasmussen. He admits that Stephanie had contacted him and pleaded with him to stay with her, that she tried to use sex as a means to keep him in the relationship.
After her murder, John Rutan ends up having sex with Stephanie Lazarus 2 more times, and probably totally, completely oblivious to the fact that the woman that he is having sex with is the very one that killed his wife.
Stephanie Lazarus never takes the stand. In fact, her defense is entirely built on character and her outstanding record of service with the LAPD.
She tried to use her position and her prominence within the Los Angeles Police Department to place doubt in the mind of the jurors as to whether or not a member of the Los Angeles Police Department would commit such a heinous crime.
Lazarus's defense attorney argues that the evidence in the Sherry Rasmussen case had been tampered with.
But the problem is that the DNA does in fact come back to Stephanie Lazarus.
Friday, March 9th, 2012. After 48 hours of deliberations, the jury finds Stephanie Lazarus guilty of first-degree murder.
We, the jury, in the above-entitled action, find the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the crime of murder of Sherry Rasmussen.
She is sentenced 27 years to life in prison.
In May 2013, Stephanie Lazarus files a lengthy appeal of her conviction. 2 years later, an appellate court rules against her.
Fellow LAPD officers still wonder how Stephanie Lazarus managed to hide her involvement in this heinous crime for 2 decades.
What's amazing is you have this woman who's capable of tremendous rage and jealousy toward another woman. She ends up killing this woman and then was able to keep it quiet unto herself for 23 some years.